Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hidden Hockey Podcast. We'll wait for a few minutes here. Those are just joining on. If you haven't subscribed to the content before, please do so. I got all my socials listed on the bottom. I'm going to talk a lot tonight about the future superstars that are going to hit the National Hockey League, the OHL, the WHL, the QMJHL, and the NCAA. They'll be on television screens near you in the next few years, and I'm going to give you a sneak preview of all the guys that are available in these various prospect pools. So I'm very excited to talk more about them and get super into their overall potential, their overall skill. So starting off, obviously they're looking at hockey development as a whole. There's been a lot of different players that have come out and been super impressive in the last few years. You look at the likes of, Jack Hughes, Rasmus Dahlin, Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, Adam Fantilli, Matvei Michkov, a variety of other players that have all come up and done really well based on how they play the game, how they've revolutionized the way hockey is being played. And these are the next players that I expect to do the same thing. So starting off, we're going to go into the first prospect I want to talk about is James Higgins. James Higgins is as close to Patrick Kane as I've ever seen another player be. Super great skating, phenomenal edge work, very cerebral player, great hands, good skill, has the total package. He's going to go and play at Boston College this year. I'm going to throw his elite prospects profile up real quick and then share my tab once I have it. So James Higgins, 5'10" and 170 pounds. I would argue he's a little bit more than that. Has gone in. He's the consensus number one right now for this year's draft. Looking at his stats over his career, he's obviously played at unbelievable levels throughout his life. He was one of the first real standout talents to come out of Mount St. Charles Academy in Rhode Island. Went on to go to the U17 team. Gets 66 points in 43 games a couple years ago, and then last year gets 102 points in 58 games for the U18 National Development Program, on top of 22 points in 7 games at the under-18s this year. Obviously going to go to Boston College this year, but he's going to have a similar development path and way of developing like Macklin Celebrini did at Boston University earlier this year. I fully expect James Higgins to make the World Juniors roster for the U.S. this year, and I fully expect him to play in the top 6. What do you get with James Higgins? You get a guy who's an unbelievable playmaker, great hands, super smart on the puck, good ability, and an unbelievable skill set that is going to transcend and make him one of the best playmakers in the entire league for years to come. So that's what I have for James Higgins and his overall approach to the game. I think he's a stud of a player going into next year. So I'm going to go ahead here and bounce out of the tab and talk about my next player here, and Anton Frolov. So Anton Frolov, loading up his profile here, slated to play potentially at the under 20 level, but more than likely will play at the pro level for Djurgården. This is a kid who's battled a little bit of injury trouble. He's had some issues coming into his overall game. We'll see what comes out of his next few months here. This is another guy who I fully expect to make the National Hockey League in some way, shape, or form in the next 18 months. I think he's a really talented hockey player, somebody with a lot of skill, a lot of drive, good potential. A bigger guy. I think he's bigger than he's listed here. He's at 6 foot 200. I would argue he's probably about 6'1" or 6'2" and about 210. I liken him to the likes of a Matt Sundin. Bigger player, really elusive, doesn't overly play the body at time, but uses his body to utilize space. Great shot. I think his skating is really impressive for somebody of his age. To me, he's one of the more dominant Swedish prospects we've seen. Looking at him with other high caliber Swedish prospects, I put him up there with a Lucas Raymond. I think he's of that ilk. He's of that skill and potential. And he's shown it at multiple levels. Very excited to see where Anton Frolov goes. I would expect him to be, I think he is just below James Higgins, in my opinion. And to me, he is the clear 2 in next year's draft. Now we're going to move on here to Michael Misa, who is my 3rd ranked player on here. Michael Misa is an interesting guy in his own right because he's had the spotlight on him since he's been 14 years old at the at the OHL level. Obviously, through his life, he's been always thought of as being exceptional from looking at his performance there at the Brick Invitational as a 10-year-old. He went in and had 18 points in 6 games. A lot of people were really pushing the name out there by the time he was, 14. And, he hits 14 and he plays for Mississauga under 16 level. Absolutely dominates, and then goes on to have a really dominant OHL Cup, which led him to get exceptional status and then enter in the OHL a year early. With that being said, I got to watch Michael Misa now the last couple years. Really like his overall skill set. I love the way he plays the game. Another really good playmaker like James Higgins. I don't think he's as talented as James is, but I like his overall game. I like his overall skill set. I think he's a light version of James Higgins. He's not as explosive, but he's still very smart. He's a lot calmer than James Higgins is in terms of when he makes decisions. It's not, he doesn't rely on speed and edge work. He relies more on his cerebral smarts and his ability to read plays. So in a way, they're good playmakers, but with different perceptive ways of viewing their playmaking. Michael's going to come in and obviously be a really dominant force next year at the OHL level. I would expect him to have 100 points next year. Just a ton of really liking his game, though. Good speed. He's, a puck hound. He gets after pucks. He can make plays. He can shoot. Very much a do-it-all kind of defenseman. I liken him to be more of, in the class of those that have been granted exceptional status. I put him in the same class with, a Joe Veleno. Joe Veleno has been a very effective NHL hockey player. I think he, Misa to me is a step above what Joe Veleno brings. But Joe Veleno in his prime is probably going to be, right in that echelon of where Michael Misa will be as a player. So I think it's exciting to watch him grow and develop as a player, and I think there's a lot to like with Michael Misa. Now going into my final guy for 2025 that I'm going to talk about, and that's Ivan Rabkin. He's the lone Russian guy on the list because, Russians obviously you don't really know what you're getting until they're about 16, 17, 18 years old and they play at the MHL level because there's such a variance in the different regions within Russia that you don't know what the true evaluation is until you see them at the national level and in international tournaments. Ivan Rabkin, though, is a guy who's a very talented hockey player. He's on the edge of being in this list of being a top 20 guy, in my opinion. I have him as being out of this group of players. Maybe his total upside isn't as high as some of these other prospects. There's a very, very good skill set here. I liken him to an Ilya Kovalchuk. I think there's a lot of skill, a lot of good potential with him. Even Ivan Rabkin is a guy who I think is just got potential in spades. I don't see him being more of a player than a Demidov or a Michkov. I have him a step below them, but he's, certainly a reason why he's going to be a top 5 player in this draft coming up. I really like his overall game and his skill and his potential. And we'll see, what happens here in the next few months. But I could see him fast-tracking the NHL sooner rather than later. If you have any questions, obviously, feel free to leave them in the chat. Red, I'm going to answer your questions in a little bit. I just want to talk more about the other prospects, and then I'll get into my Q&A at the end. So thank you, Red, for your patience and everything like that as I go through the rest of these prospects. So now I'm going to jump into the 2026 NHL Draft eligibles. So now we're going to move into a different grouping here. So let's start off here with Gavin McKenna. Contrary to popular belief, I was told that Gavin McKenna is actually not Connor Bedard's cousin. For whatever reason, there was a story that he was, and it turns out it was not true. So Gavin McKenna comes from Whitehorse, Yukon. Obviously, he's gone and been really impressive in the last few years. I really like his overall skill and speed. Gavin McKenna to me is a top 5 player out of this entire list of players I'm going to show you today. Gavin to me is a guy who's a game-breaking talent. Has speed similar to a Connor Bedard or like a Connor McDavid. He skates very similar to them. This is a guy who can score goals in bunches. He can also play make. He was just as dominant as James Higgins was at a year younger at the U18s with 20 points in 7 games. He's been at every level he's ever been at. He's been an absolute exceptional talent. Obviously we're looking at here, when he was 12 years old, he's playing at the U15 level, goes down to play at the U18s as a 14-year-old. Everything and anything he could do at every level he's been able to do. And I would expect this year he's going to tear up the Western Hockey League. Is 120 to 125 points out of his realm? Absolutely not. I think the sky's the limit with him. He's definitely going to find himself on the World Junior roster here in the next little bit, and I'm very excited to see where his overall game goes. But what's the kid in caboodle with him, and the main part of why he's such a draw is how smart he is around the puck. Unbelievable scorer, great skill set. He can also feed the puck in any direction you want him to. A pretty good straight line skater, but he's also very responsible defensively as well. This is a can't miss kid. He's absolutely, in this group of players that I'm going to talk about today. Gavin McKenna is a guy who I could see putting up 100 points and being a league MVP one day in the National Hockey League. That's how highly I believe in Gavin McKenna and his skill set. I'll be putting out a highlight reel of him probably in the latter half of the year and talking more about why he is by far and away, to me, the number 1 pick in 2026. So now I'm going to move on here and go to another player of mine who I really like, and I like the overall skill set, and it's Viggo Bjork. This is a kid who has really landed on scouts and hockey evaluators' radar in the last 12 months or so. Has dominated the under 18 level, is definitely going to play the under 20 level for Djurgårdens. A little bit smaller at 5'8" and 170 pounds. Some think, because he's playing in certain regions of the under 18 league, you see there were 98 points in 36 games last year. It's a bit of a weaker region, which is probably why he made his move to Djurgårdens and playing for a stronger region within the U18 level, which is going to help his development and his overall skill set. I could see this kid getting under 20 time very quickly. His shot is his calling card, a really, really strong shooter. I'm absolutely has an NHL shot right now as a 16-year-old. There's a lot to like and a lot of growth that's to be had here. He played at the Ivan Holinka, this past week. Did okay as an underager, but I would expect him to come in next year and be really dominant. Put up a lot of points. I could see him putting up 10 to 12 points next year in Ivan Holinka, should he be healthy and should he be ready to play. But there's a lot to like with him. There's some growth still within him. I think there's, I don't even see him, I'm going to talk more about another Swede here in the next little bit. He may not be the top Swede in this draft class, believe it or not. He might be, a little bit lower, but he's still an elite talent, still somebody you want to watch for, and somebody that, has produced at a level that is really unprecedented. And, as a result, we have to talk about him and talk about him as an elite prospect. Moving on now to Elton Hermanson, playing for Örebro at the under 20 level. This is a kid who's 6 foot and 180 pounds already. His listing's at 170, but I've watched him play. He's a lot bigger than 170. This is a kid who, you watch him again at every level he's played at. He's been super dominant. He's going to find himself potentially on the under 18 team, along with Viggo Bjork, in this, here in April. I really think he's going to come in at the under 20 level and be really, really impressive. This is a kid who's an unbelievable straight line skater, one of the faster kids out of this group of players in the draft. Very excited to see where he goes and where he continues as a hockey player. I think there's a lot to like within his game and skill set that's going to really bring out a lot more for him. And, I think in a couple of years, you're going to talk about Elton Hermanson, and you're going to have him in your World Junior under 20, tournament rosters, because he's such a valuable player in terms of his offense, in terms of his ability and everything he's got going on here. So there's a lot to like with Elton Hermanson here. I got 2 more players here I'm going to go into, and then I'm going to take a break, and then I'm going to answer some questions here in the chat. So 2 other guys I'm going to talk about. One in North America is a massive 16-year-old kid, just drafted number 1 in the OHL draft, and that's Ethan Blechetz. Ethan Blechetz is 6 foot. They have him listed at 6'5" and 235, based on what I've been reading. This is a massive player for this size. You would think with puberty and everything like that he'd be still working to grow within his size. But he's really becoming his own player. He's really been super strong. I've watched a couple games of his, and this kid, a lot of people think when they watch minor hockey, yes, he's 6'5" and 235 pounds. Yes, he's going to dominate the minor hockey circuit. But this kid's got a whole lot of skill to look at too. We're going to talk a little bit here. I'm going to answer Red's question in a few minutes about Roger McQueen. This is another kid who's a massive, massive player, still growing in his body too. The upside with Ethan Blechetz is he might be 6'7" and 250 pounds, and he might be a freak. There's a lot to like there in terms of his ability and his skill set and what he brings to the table. He's going to have resources. Obviously, he's already played at the junior level already as a 16-year-old, which is unbelievable. Actually, he was a 15-year-old, which is unbelievable in its own right. And then he's going to play for Windsor this year. I would expect Ethan to, be somewhere in the middle six there for the Windsor Spitfires. This is a kid who's a true power forward, absolute beast in front of the net. But he's also got skill. He can burn you on both ends of the ice. Really good defensive player, a good shot, but he's also got some brute force to him. There's a lot to like here. Obviously you don't want to can't compare him to the likes of an Aaron Lindros. They're totally different players, different styles. But seeing the skill and the size, it's hard not to love Ethan Blechetz, and he's going to be a very intriguing player that's going to get a lot more attention in the next 12 months. And then finally, my last guy I'm going to talk about today, or talk about before I get into the questions here, is JP Herbert, who is a 2026 player. This kid's the top American, has been for a long time here for the 08 pro, the 08 birth year. Has been dominant throughout his level, career at the Dallas Stars travel teams. Super skilled player, good potential, good ability. I really like his overall skill set. This is a kid who he's very, very smart on the puck. He's great stick handler, good ability, great hands. But he's also super smart. He could score goals with the best of them, as you can see there at the under 14 level. 112 goals in 75 games, and then he plays up a year and goes and almost has a goal per game. I'm going to play on the under-17 team this year. He's going to get some games against some college players. I don't anticipate he's going to have that much of a transition. But I really like his overall game and skill set, and I think there's a lot of potential to be had with JP Herbert. So, JP is a guy who I think he just committed recently to the University of Michigan. This is a guy who's got unbelievable skating. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He never makes a dumb play. I think his defensive work needs a little bit of help. This is a kid who's got really high upside, and there's a lot to like there with JP Herbert. So I'm going to go now. I'm going to jump back here and share my tab again. Talked about the first 9 players. Obviously, as a recap, Hagens, Frondell, Misa, Rabkin. Obviously, we talked about Gavin McKenna, Bjork, Hermanson, Blechetz, and Herbert. I'm going to get to some questions now. Obviously, Red just had a question here. Hi, I have a question. What is Roger McQueen's upside? Roger McQueen, to me, I like his upside. I think, he recently is just, last I read was he's actually now 6'7", which is pretty massive for a forward. I see some top 6 upside in him. I think the skating's got to get a little better for Roger McQueen. I don't have him as being this really exceptional player, but I do think he's a guy who's going to fall in the first round here in 2025. Really like his good skill sets, the way he handles the pucks, the way he makes decisions. But there is some growth there. He's obviously a long-term prospect in terms of when I think he'll make the NHL. I think he is going to strengthen up and get bigger, but is he going to be ready to play at the pro level in 3 years? I'm not so sure that he will be. I think there's a couple years of junior for him still, and then I think he'll move into the pro ranks. But the big upside for him is obviously he's a massive frame guy. He's still growing within that frame. He's a good skater for right now, but I think he really needs to still work on skating and work on his ability to get faster, get more acceleration within his game. But there's a lot to like with Roger McQueen. I think he's a guy who's going to get himself some time at the under-18 team for Canada here next year, and there's more to see there. So thank you, Red, for the question. Any other questions you guys have during this, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'm going to answer them after I get done with these next prospects here. Talking about more guys that are either entering into the junior level or getting into, a higher end, leagues within the next 12 to 18 months. So thank you for the question, Red. So I'm going to get back on here to the latest exceptional status player, and that is Landon Dupont. Landon Dupont is the only defenseman I'm going to feature today because, to me, he is the generational talent that everybody thinks he is. So I'm going to jump back in here. The best defenseman I've seen since Kel McCarr. I'm just going to come out and say that. This is a kid who's going to be ready at the Western Hockey League level. Absolute freak of nature in terms of, what he's done at the under 18s, the under 18 level and the Scholastic Hockey League. He's going to play in Everett. He will immediately be their best defenseman in Everett next year. This is a guy who his skating is far beyond his years. He's only 15 years of age, but the skating and everything he brings to the table is already pro ready. Really smart in terms of how he handles pucks, the way he distributes pucks. This is a power play quarterback through and through, but he's also a very good defensive player. He takes angles really responsibly, very good at covering his own defensive side of the game. This is an all-around number one can't-miss defenseman. I have him the likes of Dolly, and I have him the likes of McCarr. I see him as just an unbelievable high-end defenseman and somebody who's going to get a lot of love here in the next little bit. For those in the Western Hockey League that have the opportunity to watch him, you must go and see him. This is a kid who, you look at his level here, he's at every level, he's been very dominant as a defenseman, putting up 2 points a game at the under 18 level as a 14-year-old last year. Just a freak of nature, somebody who you're really going to like to see and, has a ton of potential. To me, one of the higher end players out of this grouping. So now we're going to move on here to another guy who I think is a really talented player as well. I'm going to type him in here, Alexis Joseph. He has not been drafted in the QMJHL yet. He's eligible this year. 6'4" and 190 pounds. This is an 09 born player. Played at the under 18 level as a 14-year-old last year. A massive human being, a guy who has dominated every level he's ever played at. Was going to apply for exceptional status, but decided against it, which I think is actually smart. I don't know that he had the talent that Landon Dupont does. I think he's right up there with Landon in terms of his overall game and ability. But there's more to see here with Landon, with Alexis Joseph. He's a guy who is going to come in and has to play at the under 18 level again in Quebec this year. Should be completely dominant at this level at this point. He was already a top 10 scorer as an underager last year. I would expect him to lead the league in scoring. I would expect him to be the number one overall pick in the QMJHL draft in 2025. And this is a guy who is just a bull in a china shop, power forward, down your throat, can go and put up some real points on you. Good shot. Really good skater as well. He doesn't look bulky, at his size. Just really like his game overall. He's a very athletic, fast player, brings a lot of energy to the game. And this is a kid who, to me, has dominated again at every level you can see here based on his statistics. He has not found a level that has challenged him yet. He's going to get to the QMJHL. I think he will be an impact player from day one in the QMJHL should his development progress the way that we all expect it to. But Alexis Joseph is a guy who is definitely somebody to watch here in the next 12 to 18 months. He will get in the household names and be on the radars of a lot of people in Quebec and beyond in North America. This is a kid who he may even find himself an opportunity to play at the under 17s and really be dominant. I think he's got everything you can want and ask for. He should play at the World Hockey Championships at the under 17 level. I think he will be an impact player at that level for Team Canada, and is somebody who you really like what he brings to the table in his overall skill set. There's a lot to like with Alexis Joseph. So going now to another player that I'm going to mention here is Rocco Pelosi, another American-born kid, a 2009-born kid. I obviously, I'm going to just show you the stats first. You can look and see here. 170 points in 64 games at the under 14, at the 14 U travel level. By far the best scorer at that level in years. Rocco is a guy who just, he finds good teammates and he makes sure he just leverages the heck out of who's in his general vicinity. He's the ultimate producer. Not somebody who, I think is ready for major junior hockey just yet. Obviously, he's got a year to really develop and grow. He's going to use this year to probably play at the under 15 or maybe even the under 16 level in the U.S. and really play against high-end players and high-end talent. This is a kid who, to me, is by far the best 09 out of America. The only other guy who I could see making an argument, who I debated actually even putting on this list, is Trevor Daley Jr. From the Florida Alliance, who is also an OHL eligible guy. I think Rocco is leaning probably more in CAA. I could see him being a really, really highly sought-after recruit next year. He will be the top prize for all, the big schools will all be calling. The Boston universities will call, Boston colleges, the Michigans, the Michigan States, the Minnesota Duluths, the various other schools that have been just really dominant in the last 20 years. Everybody's going to want this kid on the radar. He is the 5-tool prospect. He is the 5-star guy that everybody's going to want. And there's a ton of reasons to like him as well. He's a good straight line skater, very good on the power play. His can pass as well as he shoots. They're on defense. He's very responsible as well. I've caught actually a few games of his. I really like what he brings to the table. He's not anything that's going to blow you out of the water, but everything he does is very good. He almost gives me a John Tavares type vibe to him, which is why, John Tavares got exceptional status for those reasons. Does Rocco Pelosi, didn't obviously apply for that and can't apply for it anymore. But, lots to like there with Rocco Pelosi. I think he's a really high-end player, somebody you're going to really want to watch out for. And, I would expect him to really land on some radars here, if he hasn't already, at the college level in very short time. Another player here we're going to get into here is Jacobson, who I'm going to go ahead and load his profile real quick. This is a late-born 08 kid. He's going to play he's in the 27 draft. Is 3 weeks away from being a 2009 born kid. Has gone and played at the WHL level and has almost been a point per game at the WHL level, which is really impressive for a young player, probably the youngest player in the Western Hockey League last year. And actually this year will be likely one of the younger players again this year. I would fully expect Jacobson to be anywhere from 0.75 to about 1 point per game in the Western Hockey League. This is a kid who can't physically dominate necessarily because he's only 5'9" and about 170 pounds, but this is a guy who can outsmart you in more ways than one. Very good puck handler, good passer. Also has a secret ability to score goals here. As you see, he's got 4 goals in 7 games already at the Western Hockey League level. I would expect him to put up 25 to 30 goals next year to be conservative and probably close to 70 to 80 points next year. This is a guy who's going to be really helping Brandon out and be a top 6 potential player for the Brandon Wheat Kings. But overall, this is a guy who I put him in the likes of, Hagens. I put him in the likes of, some of these other playmaking players, but, he's doing it at a really high level at a very young age. So it's very impressive to watch him. Does he scream exceptional player status to me? No, obviously not. But does he scream very good hockey player to me? He absolutely does. This is a kid to me. He's a can't-miss first-round prospect. More than likely, he's going to be in the top 10 for 27. I would have him currently at 4 or 5 on my mock. And somebody who I really like his game and his overall ability. A lot to like there with Jacobson. Or, sorry, not Jackson Jacobson. My apologies. And then finally, I'm going to get into another player who just recently earned exceptional status, but in a different way than most have, and that's Eli McCain. He earned exceptional status at the BCHL level. Obviously, as a lot of people know, the BCHL is disbanded from Hockey Canada, has become its own development system, and no longer receiving funding from Hockey Canada. So they're finding ways to get these players and get them in the right track. Eli McCain is a guy who has earned exceptional status. He's going to play for the Penticton Vees next year, which is one of the best programs in Junior A in the entire country. If you're playing Tier 2 Junior A, you want to go to the Brooks Bandits, you want to go to the Penticton Vees, you want to go to the Humboldt Broncos, you want to go to these various other programs that are really high-end developers of talent. And he made his opportunity felt and known by wanting to come and play in the BCHL this year. I think he's an all-around really talented player. I liken him, in the game I watched him, it only took me 10 minutes to really watch him and understand who he was as a player. This is a hard-nosed, really in-your-face kind of player, likes to get kind of nasty. I liken him to a Shane Doan. I think he's in that ability and that skill set. I think his career ultimately ends up like that. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but man, is he nasty, and man, does he like to get in front of the net. Brings it all. I think he's got a real captain mindset to him. Very smart player, very cerebral in terms of how he manages, pucks and plays and the way he goes about his business. A lot to like with Eli McCain. I think there's just a ton of skill, a ton of ability to a player like Eli. So now we go on here to this is the 2028 draft eligibles. These are the guys who none of these guys have made the junior hockey circuit yet. These are guys that are more than likely I would put in my exceptional status player area. So I'm going to go ahead and get into a different player here. So let me go into I'm going to type him in here. Franz Karjalotti, late 09 born kid. Going to play at the under 18 level this year. 5'10", 154 pounds. This kid's been known on a lot of prospect radars for, I want to say, 2 to 3 years now. Really been dominant in the Finnish junior circuit. You look at what he did last year. He was 13 years old and played and had almost 2 points per game at the under 16 level, which is pretty unprecedented. HFIK is obviously a really good development system and a really high-end prospect factory in Finland. The likes of Mikael Granlund has grown out of there. Saku Koivu has grown out of there. There's a various group of other players that have come out of HFIK and have been really talented hockey players for a lot of different teams. So there's a lot to like. Developmentally for Franz Karjalotti, this is a guy to me, I think that, should he dominate at the under 18s, level this year and maybe get some under 20 time, even if he gets at that level of development, this is a kid who I think could play at the U18s. He could play for Finland as an 09, which would be unbelievable for, this upcoming under 18 tournament. But I think this is a kid with the right amount of skill and the right amount of ability to do that. He's not a burner. He's got some work to do in his skating. Obviously, there's a lot of time still because he's, just turning 15 this year. But just the high-end scoring, the high-end skill, the high-end ability to handle pucks, just a ton of ability with this guy. And I think he has grown within himself to be one of the better Finnish prospects that's ever come out in the last decade or so. I think Franz, to me, is definitely a top 5 prospect, no question. And definitely somebody who I think could really bring a lot more to the table going into next year and really putting himself on the map for a lot of different prospects and, people that evaluate prospects. He's not super known yet, but he will be next year. Leon Roos is another guy who I'm going to talk about here. He's a 2010 born player. Pretty crazy. Just turned 14. He's 14 and a half right now. He's going to play at the under 16 level in Sweden. This kid has gotten a lot of news already. He's already played 1 year at the under 16 level as a 13-year-old, had over a point per game for Brynäs, which has obviously developed a lot of different players as well. Has been super dominant at all levels. So he's going to probably play again at the under 16 level just because I think the under 18 level might be a little bit of a challenge for him right now. Do I see him maybe getting a couple games at the under 18 level for Brynäs? Absolutely. This is a guy who, when watching him, I've only caught clips so far of him, but everything I've caught of him I've really liked. Internationally, he's been incredibly dominant. He just played in the World Hockey Championships for U15s I mean, look at these statistics: 31 points in 6 games at his age group. Obviously, is way beyond his age group and where he's at in his talent ability and his overall skill set. But Leon Roos is a guy who nobody's really got a radar on right now. In fact, you won't see any prospect videos about him right now because he's so new to the prospect radar. But I fully expect this kid to really dominate in the next 12 months and find himself to be, a candidate that a lot of people are saying, probably could play at the under 20 level as a 16-year-old and might even get some SHL time by the time he's 17. This is a kid who maybe even 16. This is a very, very good prospect and somebody who you're going to want to watch coming in the next few years. I'm going to get more into another 2010 player now. Moving back to North America, we're going to talk about Liam Pugh. Liam Pugh is a Canadian kid, has really dominated on the summer circuit this year, played at the Quench World Invite, had 11 points in 6 games, and then last year really came on the radar when he played at the under 15 level as an underager and scored 2 points a game in the under 15 World Select Invitationals. 6'1" and about $160. This is a guy with super, super high-end skill. Has a great shot, unbelievable in terms of his accuracy. Really good snapshot as well. I would think he's, his snapshot is probably up there with some of the best prospects outside of the NHL in the world. Granted, he's 14 years old, but you can already see that there's a lot of skill, a lot of ability with this kid. So I think this kid is an exceptional status player. I think there's a potential for sure. To me, he's one of the best 2010s in the world. Obviously, with another guy I'm going to talk about here that's also from the West Coast in Canada. But Liam Pugh, to me, I think is the number one overall prospect out of the 2010 class for the West Coast area. Plays in a different league, the JPHL, which is a relatively new development system in the Western Canada. So he's the first of these prospects that are coming out of these leagues. This is a guy to really like, though. I think he's got everything you could want and then some. He will find himself in the Western Hockey League as soon as he's ready, and he will find himself to be a top 5, if not top 10. He'll probably be the number 1, if not a top 5 pick in the Western Hockey League draft in 2026. Or sorry, 2025. So now we're going to get into another player here in Maddox Schultz. Maddox Schultz has got an exceptional status to play at the under 18 level for the Saskatoon Midget League. And, this is a guy who's 5'10", 154 pounds. Last year, got 5 games at the under 18 level, had 2 points within that level. But this is, Maddox Schultz is a guy who's got unbelievable skill, really good shot. His skating needs some work, and I think defensively he needs a lot of work too. But you look at the point totals, you can't not look and think, wow, those are incredibly gaudy totals. Obviously, within that league, the SAHL, they only have AA levels. They don't go up to AAA in certain parts of Western Canada. So he's got the statistics he does. But obviously coming up and playing at the under 18 level as a 13-year-old is pretty unbelievable. And then the score on top of that is really impressive. So Maddox Schultz is a guy who obviously even internationally has done some work as well. Goes in and plays at the same level that Pugh did last year. Pugh had 12 points at the World Selects Invitational. Maddox Schultz has 9. Both of them being underagers at the time. Both guys that there's a lot of skill, a lot of ability and potential within those players. And we'll see where they go from here. So we got 2 more guys here I'm going to talk about. These guys are for the 2029 draft. And this kid I'm going to talk about right now, I believe, is the best out of every single player I've talked about tonight. So I'm going to get into Dominik Zsn here. He's a 2011 born kid. He's only 13 years of age. He's going to play at the under 15 level in the Czech Republic for Bílí Tigry Liberec, I think. I don't know. I haven't had to pronounce that before, so that was my first time going for it. He obviously, looking at his level, looking what he's done at the under 12, the under 13 World Select Invitational, has been unbelievably dominant, breaking Connor Bedard's records at those levels. Watching tape of him, This kid is beyond unbelievable. I think the sky's the limit with this kid. Last year, his stats aren't listed on here, but last year playing against 8th graders, he had 360 goals and like 180 assists for like 540 points in 60 games. He was averaging 8 to 9 points a game. 8 to 9 points a game. No, this isn't a basketball score, nothing like that. This kid was scoring and producing at levels we've never seen prospects develop at before. I'm going to do a highlight reel and a little bit of a discussion on him in the next, over the next few years, obviously, but I'm going to maybe do this in the next 6 months, putting together a video that shows that this kid is, to me, far and away one of the best 13, 14-year-olds I've ever seen and that the prospect world has ever seen. I want to look back at this tape and be really happy that I was able to predict that this kid is that talented. It's going to be a couple years before the world really catches this kid. But when they do, they're going to be unbelievably taken away by how skilled this kid is. He's just got hands that are unbelievable. He already skates like a kid who could play junior hockey right now. Beyond talented hockey player. There's a lot to like here from Dominik Zsn, and I have an absolute belief that he, in terms of his upside, he has the highest upside of any prospect within this video I'm talking about right now. We're going to talk more about him here in the next little bit, at least on this channel, and you'll know where you heard it from, and you'll hear it from me first. So then we're going to go into the last guy I want to talk about today, another player that actually was a teammate of Dominik Zsn's, and Olivier Tomasik. I have not had the opportunity, unfortunately, because it's impossible to get any sort of footage of Slovakian under-16 hockey. So you can understand why I wouldn't be able to watch this kid. But looking at the statistical analysis here, 36 points in 8 games this summer at the under-13 level. He even outscored Zsn at this level. Has got and played at the under-16 level now the last 2 years, the second tier of the under-16 level in Slovakia. Averaged 4 points a game as a 13-year-old. Some of these games he was 12 years old. At the under-16 level, he was putting up this statistical output. Pretty unprecedented and unbelievable talent in his own right. I'm looking forward to maybe getting some more clips and watch some more ability of him. But statistically, just stat watching on this kid, another guy who I think is going to be right up there with Dominik Zsn, a Slovak player. The Slovakian hockey system is starting to produce some really high-end players and a lot of really high-end talents that you're going to really want to pay attention to and look forward to seeing in the next few years. Obviously, there's a few years away from this kid being in the junior circuit. This is a kid to me I think could play at the under-18 level even this year in Slovakia as a 14-year-old, even as a 13-year-old. Just an unbelievable skill set, great hockey player, a lot to like with him and a lot to like with his overall ability and talents. So we're going to go here now. I've talked about my top 20. I'll go ahead and share my tab here instead. If I had to rank who I thought had the highest upside out of everybody, I would probably rank Dominik Zsn 1. I would probably put Landon Dupont at 2, Gavin McKenna at 3, and that would be my top 3 for now. I really, really like the skill of a lot of these guys on this list. All 20 of these guys, in my opinion, are top 5 picks without question. Guys who I think are going to really impact the National Hockey League in the next, within the last half decade. They're going to finish out the 2020s, and they're going to be incredibly dominant hockey players. And guys who we're going to really look forward to seeing in the next, 7 to 8 years as being really high-end players and talents. So I'm going to get more. If you guys have any questions, I'm going to stay on for a little bit. Just want to see if you have anything for your Q&A here. Thank you again, Red, for your question earlier. He asked about Roger McQueen and his upside. I don't have Roger McQueen as being a guy who's capable of being on this list. I do have him, though, as being a very good prospect for 2025 and a guy who I think could really bring some overall skill and some good potential in the coming months here. So I'll wait for a little bit here. But thank you again for everybody who's, if you were just now watching this stuff and you just learned about, my channel and what I talk about, please feel free to subscribe. Would love to have you on. It'd be greatly appreciated to have you participate within everything. But it looks like I'm not probably going to have any questions here. So with that, I'm going to probably head out. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments after watching the video. And thank you so much. We're going to talk more about, some different prospects and things in the next, few videos here, and also in a couple of live streams as well. But I'll get more into that in the coming months. So thanks again for watching. Please subscribe. Please like the content. Please watch this on recording if you haven't been able to watch it live. And thank you again for watching. Have a good day.